Naruto stood atop his father's head on the Hokage monument. As promised, he appeared at noon and waited till 1 every day for Sai or anyone else to appear for the past 3 days. He still had half an hour left before he would leave for today. He watched the various shinobi and kunoichi run across the rooftops to avoid the busy streets filled with civilians. As he waited, he went over various things in his head. He had talked to Sume about the pet he wished to give to Makoto. Luckily she knew where some still existed, and when she had some free time promised to lead him there. He knew he could have easily found it himself, but he figured she was also just trying to spend some time together with just the two of them, something he had no problem with. Currently he was chatting with Kyubi. How much longer until you figure I can start working on the physical aspects of the Hiraishin no Jutsu? Chu-san said in his notes to wait till I set the gravity seals to at least 3x normal gravity. I figure I'm about a month away from already upgrading it to 4x, Naruto thought to his red-haired vixen as he smiled when he saw Inari and the Konohamaru Corps run around the market during their lunch break. You could probably start now. You've already mastered the seals and are close to being able to apply them instantly like your Otu-san was able to do. Jikuken ninjutsu, space-time techniques, are incredibly difficult. Besides Minato, the only other people who were extremely skilled in this art were Senju Tobirama and Madara. With those eyes of his, replied Kyubi. Naruto frowned when he was reminded of that particular skill that Madara had gained when he achieved his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He'd have to do some more research to find a way to make sure he would be unable to use that technique. Before he could further dwell on the subject, he detected the usage of a Shunshin no Jutsu headed his way. Quickly recognizing it as Sai's, he turned around and spotted the young emotionless root soldier. I see you came, commented Naruto. Sai remained silent for a few seconds before responding. You say you have proof of Danzo-sama's involvement in Shin's death, correct? May I see it? Nodding his head, Naruto took out a scroll from a pocket in his flak jacket and tossed it to Sai. Just apply chakra to it to unseal it. You don't have to worry about any sort of trap. Doing as instructed, Sai unsealed the scroll and a folder popped out. Quickly catching it, he opened it up and read what it contained. A couple minutes later he closed it. He raised his other hand to his face when he felt something wet run down his cheeks. Staring at it, he heard Naruto speak. Those are tears, Sai. We cry when we are sad, happy, in pain, or any combination of the three. I cannot tell you what those tears are for though. Only you can determine that. Sai looked back at his hand after Naruto finished speaking. What do I cry for? He thought to himself. Resealing the folder in the scroll, he tossed it back to Naruto, who replaced it back in the pocket. I thank you for the information. I must continue my duties now. Farewell for now, Uzumaki-san, and with that Sai left. Turning back around, Naruto once again looked across Konoha, and now we wait and see what happens next. It was midday during the first week of May and we find Anko, Sume, Makoto and Tsunami sitting out back with Anko and Sume laughing their asses off as once again a shout of "OOOWWW" rang through the Namikaze compound. Currently Naruto was working on the Hiraishin no Jutsu and was having a little trouble stopping, which led his girls to mention if he wanted to master it faster than Minato did to make some motivation to master it faster, and not running into that Kami Forsaken tree in the backyard was one hell of a motivation. He had placed the seal on a tree about 100 feet away and was currently not having any luck with him coming out of the jutsu without running into the damn tree. Getting back up, he turned around to spot his fourth and newest mate Anko along with Sume with tears in their eyes from laughing so hard, while Makoto and his first mate Tsunami were giving plenty of love to a litter of foxes and their parents next to them. Naruto smiled at the scene as he recalled the outing with Sume to a den of foxes that she knew about. Her Ninken Kuromaru, the only animal Naruto had met that could talk that wasn't a summon, had ventured with them. After a playful chase, they had eventually reached the den. He initially only planned on getting Makoto a single kit, but somehow the entire family had followed him back to the Namikaze estates and decided to live in the forest inside the barrier. Kuromaru told him that they would let his future mate take one of the kits, as long as one of them took a liking to her, to take home with her until she moved in with him. When he brought Makoto over and introduced her to the litter, she eventually found a connection to a little female kit that had black fur and blue eyes that reminded her of Naruto. When Sasuke saw the kit for the first time in his mother's arms, he just looked at it before heading to his room. Speaking of his relationship with Makoto, he had decided to make sure she was comfortable with the physical parts of it before he consummated their relationship. They had gotten as far as oral sex while he was still planning her special day. Deciding to take a break, he headed over to the group. "Ladies," he said, smiling at them. They smiled back at him as he picked Anko up, then sat down in the reclining chair she was on with her on his lap. She wasn't wearing her coat at the moment, so he could see his mark on her. He leaned forward, placing a light kiss on it, smirking as she shivered from the sensitivity of it. He leant back, pulling her with him as he relaxed, simply enjoying being around those he loved. The next day, Naruto was heading toward the Hokage Tower to see what the Hokage needed from him. Walking in the tower, he nodded at the guards and headed up the stairs. Reaching the office, he smiled, seeing the secretary sitting at her desk. Using his skills, he quietly approached her from behind and leaned down, moving her hair out of the way and kissing her neck. "Morning, Tsubaki-chan," he whispered in her ear. Tsubaki was sitting at her desk in the Hokage Tower. She had been the Hokage's personal secretary for about a month now. Suddenly she felt someone moving her hair and kissing her neck. She shivered at the pleasurable feeling and smiled when she heard the "Morning, Tsubaki-chan." Tilting her head up, she was met with the eyes of her love. "Morning, Naru-kun. I wish we could talk some more, but Hokage-sama informed me to send you in as soon as you arrived." Nodding his head at that, he gave her a kiss before heading in. Hiruzen was sitting at his desk when he heard his door open. Seeing who it was that came in, he smiled. "Ah, Naruto-kun. I'm sorry this couldn't be a social visit, but I have an S-rank mission that requires your specialties." Raising an eyebrow at that, Naruto stopped in front of the desk before addressing his leader. "Oh. What does this mission entail, Hokage-sama?" Hiruzen inwardly smiled. Naruto was so much like his parents, as even though they were a happy and seemingly carefree couple, they knew when to be serious. "We received late last night a message from High Priestess Moroku of Oni no Kuni, that unknown forces have stolen a vase containing the soul of a demon named Morio after killing the guards at the shrine holding it. In the chance that this demon is released, you are to assess the situation and if possible deal with it, and with your light element being effective toward demons, I can think of no one better suited for this mission." Naruto nodded at that. "Will I be going alone?" "No. Teams 8, 9 and 10 will be going with you on a joint A-rank mission to investigate and guard the High Priestess and her daughter. Kurenai, Guy and Asuma will be informed of your other mission, though with Asuma being overall in charge," replied Hiruzen. Nodding at that, Naruto received the scroll with the mission details before bowing and leaving through the door to give a kiss to Tsubaki and inform her that he'd be gone for a while. As he was walking through the streets, he was trying to figure out why Oni no Kuni seemed significant to him. His eyes widened and he suddenly stopped in the middle of the road, ignoring the looks he was receiving. "Oni no Kuni, High Priestess Moroku, daughter, crap, I can't believe I forgot." What's the matter, Koi?" responded Kyubi, confused by his actions. "The employer for my mission is the mother of one of the daughters Otu-san and Ka-san arranged for me to marry. She and I recall her name was," Naruto thought back. "Well, this should be an interesting couple of weeks, Hakoishi," Kyubi replied with a smirk. "Anyways, what do you know of this demon named Morio?" he said, resuming his walk. "Honestly, I'm surprised he's still alive. While he's nothing compared to a Biju, his power would still give a cage-level nin a hard time. Last time I saw him, he was easily as big as the Hokage monument. However, with your skills and your light element, you should have no problem defeating him, as long as you don't get careless." Dressed in his usual clothing, cloak included, Naruto was leaning against the gate waiting for the others to arrive. Hearing voices, he opened his eyes and spotted the forms of Teams 8, 9 and 10 approaching. "Man, I can't wait to rub it in Sasuke's face that we're going on an A-rank mission," exclaimed the voice belonging to Kiba. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Kiba, but Team 7 have already been credited an A-rank mission," Naruto stated, alerting everyone to his presence. Clutching his chest, Kiba pointed a finger at him. "What are you doing here? Also, what do you mean they've been credited an A-rank mission already?" Straightening up and stretching his back, Naruto responded. "First, I'm here to accompany you all on your mission, and for the other question, I went on Team 7's first C-rank mission that was upgraded to A-rank when certain factors appeared during the mission." Kiba's jaw was on the ground hearing that. "Anyway, we should probably get a move on. Oni no Kuni is a 5-day travel at a ninja pace from here. However, since the severity of this mission, we should get there as soon as possible." In fact, here Naruto grinned, if we make it there in 3 days, I'll treat you all to a 1-day expenses paid, do whatever you want day. At that offer Choji, Ino, Kurenai, hell pretty much all of them had stars in their eyes thinking of the possibilities. After making sure the genin had what they would need they headed out. 2 days later they were still traveling. As expected from Guy, his team had done well in keeping up with the pace, which was at low chunin speed, with the others being able to match the speed but with their levels of stamina, Naruto and the Jonin knew they wouldn't last much longer. Another hour of traveling and they stopped in a clearing for a break. Immediately the forms of Kiba, Hinata, Shino, Ino, Shikamaru and Choji collapsed on the ground while Neji and Tenten were breathing hard and Lee was sweating just a bit. Walking over to Lee, Naruto spoke, "So how goes the ninjutsu training?" Lee smiled at that as he remembered the day Naruto had cured him of his disease. Flashback. Team 9 was currently doing their usual routine of training when they noticed Guy averted his attention from them. Following his line of sight they spotted the form of Naruto heading their way. "Good morning," he greeted them. "Yash. Good morning Naruto-kun. Do you wish to join us in this youthful morning practice?" Guy questioned. "Maybe another time as I am here to see if given the chance if Lee would still like to use his chakra," Naruto stated. "Have you really found a way to cure me Naruto-san?" Lee spoke in a calm manner surprising his teammates. "Indeed I have. The only reason I did not do it when we first met was that I didn't have the necessary knowledge concerning the chakra pathway system, but I have done the necessary research since I first brought this up and I am now ready if you wish to proceed," Naruto replied. Looking down, Lee thought of what to do. Ever since he learned of his disease and that he'd be unable to use his chakra for ninjutsu or genjutsu, he promised to himself that he'd be the best taijutsu master ever. When he met Guy Sensei he further strengthened his resolve. But now he was being given a choice that he never thought was possible. Feeling a hand on his shoulder he looked and saw Tenten smiling at him. Taking a breath he looked at Naruto. "Please cure me Naruto-san." Having Lee lay down, Naruto kneeled next to him and going through 25 hand seals too fast for any of them to see called out Ranpu, Enerugi no Hoshutsu, light, releasing of the energy. As usual his hands started to glow white, astonishing the members of Team 9 as the light covered Lee's body. About 5 minutes later the light receded, but when it completely receded the others were shocked as a massive amount of chakra erupted from Lee's body. Impressive. He has low Jonin level chakra reserves. Although considering the amount of physical training he's done it's not unsurprising, Naruto thought as he stood back from the laying team. It took roughly 30 seconds for the chakra to stop whirling around and return to his body. Guy and Tenten were by his side instantly while Neji stood a couple feet away. Once the team was in a sitting position Naruto spoke, "Congratulations Lee, you are now able to use ninjutsu and genjutsu. You should start with the 3 academy jutsu first, then work your way up if you wish to explore these new options. Of course you will need to spend more time controlling your chakra as you have full access to it now." Lee blinked for a few times before he smiled. Flashback end. "It has been most youthful my friend. Guy Sensei has been teaching me the wonders of chakra. With this knowledge I will make sure my flames of youth never extinguish," replied Lee. Naruto just shook his head at that and after a short talk headed over to where the females were. Sitting down next to Kurenai he greeted them. "Nay Kurenai Sensei, what's that mark on your neck?" questioned Ino. Kurenai smiled as she responded, "Well, it's a private matter, but it was given to me by my amant lover." The other girls blushed at that. More so Tenten since she knows who Kurenai's lover is. Hinata, once she got her blush under control, remembered something. Kurenai Sensei, didn't that lady, Anko-san, have one too?" Kurenai mentally cursed at that. She had been bringing Anko with her to her team meetings every now and then to help her, especially with Hinata with her confidence issues, and forgot that Naruto had recently marked her. Sighing she looked at the girls in front of her and Naruto. "Yes, Anko-chan does indeed have one too. The man that I'm with is the last of his clan and like Sasuke is allowed to marry several women in Konoha. Anko and I are some of the women that have been lucky enough to have fallen in love with him and him us." Hinata and Ino were wide-eyed at that. "Wait a minute, you mean to tell me that I fought with all those other girls trying to be with Sasuke, for nothing?" questioned Ino with disbelief on her face. Losing Sakura as a friend for all those years was one thing, but to learn that Sasuke was able to marry more than one girl, she shook her head to get rid of the thoughts. Kurenai looked at the platinum blonde girl. Pretty much. Does Sasuke know this? Questioned Ino again, unaware that she hadn't been using the kun suffix at all lately. I'm sure he was aware of it beforehand, but he was officially informed by the council when he turned 12, Kurenai informed her. Ah, excuse me ladies, Naruto, but we'll be leaving in a few, so get ready, Asuma stated before walking back to where Shikamaru and the other males were. Getting up, Kurenai gave the young female genin a stern look. You will not tell anyone of mine and Anko's relationship with our mystery man. He hasn't revealed himself for a reason, and if someone found out when he wasn't ready, could mean trouble for not only him but Konoha as well. If I have to, I will have the Hokage have you sworn to secrecy on the penalty of death. Gulping, they quickly nodded their heads at that. 6 hours later and they reached the village that the high priestess and her daughter lived. They noticed the increase of guards at the entrance and the number of patrols as they were escorted through the village. Finally reaching what they surmised as the residence of the high priestess, they were led into a room and were told to wait. No more than 5 minutes later, the door on the opposite end of the room opened and several people walked in. Many were obviously bodyguards and some looked like advisors, but it was pretty obvious who the high priestess was when she walked into the room. She was very beautiful. She stood at a height of 5 feet 10 inches with long raven hair that reached her ass, and when she turned towards them she had pale lavender eyes like those of the Hyuga. She wore what one would expect from someone of high status, and though it covered her body, Naruto and the others had a feeling her body was probably amazing as well. Moroku was with her daughter when she was told that the Konoha nin had arrived. Giving a kiss to her daughter's forehead, she left to greet the newcomers. When she walked into the room where they were at, she looked over those that Konoha had sent to aid her. She easily recognized the son of the Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi Asuma and Konoha's taijutsu specialist Maeda Guy. Due to having a great interest in genjutsu herself, she recognized the older woman as Yuhi Kurenai, Konoha's genjutsu mistress. She concluded that the kids behind them were their students. She was surprised when she recognized some being from the Inuzuka, Hyuga, Aburame, Yamanaka, Akamichi and Nara clans, all major clans of Konoha. However, when her eyes landed on the last figure, she felt her breath hitch. Minato. No, while he looks like him, I can see some differences. Also, I can sense Yuki inside him. There was only one conclusion she could come to, but she thought that their child was dead, but this boy, no man, looked so much like Minato with a bit of Kushina that he had to be their son. Getting over her shock, she addressed them, "Welcome to my home. I am surprised to see you so soon, I must admit." Asuma, being the leader, responded, "Well, you can thank our comrade for that." He gestured toward Naruto, who smiled and bowed when Moroku looked at him. "Really now, if you don't mind telling, how did you accomplish this feat?" questioned Moroku. Naruto grinned that reminded Moroku even more of Minato before answering, "Well, I was aware of the importance of this mission. So I made a bet with everyone that if we made it here within 3 days, that I would treat them all to a 1-day expenses paid, do whatever you want day." Moroku's eyes widened at that. "That is some bet. You must be quite wealthy to make that type of bet. Anyways, may I ask the name of the one who encouraged his comrades to come to our aid so quickly?" "My name is Uzumaki Naruto, High Priestess Moroku." "It really is him," she thought as she smiled and bowed toward him. After formally introducing themselves to everyone, Moroku brought up the reason she requested their aid. 500 years ago, a demon known as Morio tried to destroy the world and create his own 1,000-year kingdom. However, a woman with great power was able to stop him by separating his soul and body. She sealed his soul here in Oni no Kuni and his body in Numa no Kuni, land of swamps. Since then, her descendants have made sure that Morio never rises again, but unfortunately, here she pauses as she looks outside the window for a couple seconds before looking at them again. The guards that watched the site where we keep Morio's soul were killed and his soul is missing. We can only assume that someone is trying to revive the demon and that their next destination would be to head toward his body." "You're telling me we have to face a demon?" Kiba blurted out in disbelief. "Right now that is the worst case scenario. However, it is more than likely that these unknown forces have yet to revive this Morio demon. If we can take them out before they reach his body, then we don't have to deal with it," replied surprisingly to most of the genin Shikamaru. "Shikamaru is right. For now we rest and get as much information as we can, then we leave first thing tomorrow morning, Asuma stated while inwardly pleased with Shikamaru's reasoning. Yes, that sounds reasonable. For now I'll have my guards show your genin around while we talk some more. Also I would like for Uzumaki-san to stay as well, spoke Moroku. Not seeing anything wrong with that, the jonin nodded their heads at that and watched as their students left the room. Once they were gone, Moroku ordered her guards and advisors to leave as well. After the door shut, Naruto spoke, "So how's Shin?" Moroku, startled at first by the question, quickly smiled as she got up and walked toward Naruto. Kneeling in front of him, she leaned forward, bringing him in a hug. Bringing his arms around her, he tightened the embrace as she rested her head on his shoulder. Leaning back, Naruto used his thumbs to wipe the tears on her cheeks. She smiled and blushed a bit as she noticed how close they were. As a priestess, her time spent with men was short and she had only been intimate once, and that was to produce an heir. "I thought that you had died with them when I heard what happened that day," she said after controlling herself. Naruto gave a sad small smile at that. Chu-san knew he couldn't defeat Kyuubi, so he sealed her in the only being he could trust. "I see. That would explain the Yuki I can sense coming from you." "Wait, her?" Moroku questioned with wide eyes. She knew demons had genders, but to learn the greatest demon of all was female was astonishing, and the fact Naruto knew Kyuubi's gender brought more questions to her mind. Chuckling, he responded, "Don't worry. We have all night to catch up." And catch up they did. After informing them of all the things she could think of for the mission, Asuma and Guy left to check on their teams. Moroku then called for her daughter. When Shin walked in, she was also quite stunning. She stood at 5 feet 6 inches with very long light blonde hair tied in a ponytail at the ends. Her bangs were blunt cut across her forehead, and she had the same pale lavender eyes as her mother. She wore clothing similar to her mother. "Ah, Shin, I would like you to meet Yuhi Kurenai and..." Moroku was cut off as Naruto spoke, "Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. It's a pleasure to meet you, Shin-san." Shin thought she recognized the name but couldn't recall from where, so she responded, "It is quite rude to interrupt one of much higher status. Perhaps you should remember that next time, as doing so could get you killed in some places." Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. Well, her snobbish tone. That might be true, but even though Moroku is a high priestess, I am a king, and I believe King outranks high priestess in status. Shin and Moroku's eyes widened at that, while Kurenai giggled at her mate's response. "What do you mean, king?" questioned Moroku. For the next several hours Naruto explained his life to the two of them. Shin was shocked to learn that this man in front of her was her fiancé, and that he already had other women in his life as well as being a father. Moroku wasn't faring much better. While she knew that if Minato and Kushina had a son that he would be engaged to multiple women, to learn that he had so many already, including Kyuubi and the Godime Mizukage, was mind-blowing. She also couldn't help but feel an attraction towards him when he used that technique of his to show his life, and when she learnt that he could actually kill Morio, she wondered what would happen next, since her family's main purpose for existence is to make sure Morio never awakens. The next morning found everyone outside. Earlier that morning the Jonin and Naruto had come to a plan on their next move. Asuma addressed the group, "All right, this is what we're going to do. Teams 8 and 10 will stay here to protect the High Priestess and her daughter. Team 9 and Naruto will head to Numa no Kuni to head off the enemy forces with Guy in charge. From the info we've received from 2 surviving guards named Sasuke and Taruho, there were 5 culprits that attacked the shrine. 2 seem to be close combat specialists, 1 mid to long range combat specialist, 1 support specialist that might have knowledge of Ijutsu medical techniques, as he somehow enhanced the abilities of his comrades, and the only one who didn't attack directly, who seems to be the leader." Ino, hearing the way Asuma stressed a certain word, decided to question it. "Asuma-sensei, what do you mean by enhanced?" "We are not sure how, but he was able to enhance their abilities, putting them around at least Chunin level in skills, which is why Team 9 and Naruto will be going, since they have more experience than you 6, Asuma responded to the female member of Team 10. Ino and the others nodded at that, remembering the story Naruto told them that day on top of the Hokage monument. Watching Team 9 and Naruto leaving, Moroku stepped up next to Kurenai, seeing the concern in her eyes, with Shin next to her mother. "Don't worry. They are strong, and Naruto-kun will make sure they all come back to us." Kurenai nodded at that with a small smile on her face and with a hidden smirk. She realized she would need to do some talking with the High Priestess about her feelings toward their Naruto-kun, as well as the young priestess, as she had seen the way the both of them had been watching him since they arrived. They had crossed into Numa no Kuni after a day of traveling west. After another 5 hours Neji had them stop. Looking at him he spoke with his Byakugan active, staring ahead. There are 5 chakra signatures roughly 200 meters ahead. One of them is carrying a vase of some kind and I cannot see through it. That is most likely the container that holds the demon's soul then. Alright, this is. Guy started but was interrupted by Neji. Wait. One of them is injecting some type of chakra into the other 3. Neji paused as his eyes widened. The ones being injected have had their chakra reserves increased several fold. Also it seems to have altered their chakra to use elemental chakra that wasn't there before. They know we are here as all except one has continued forward. Guy frowned at that. There goes the element of surprise. They must have a sensor type or one with advanced senses. Let's go. Charging forward they came upon a man that was 6 feet 6 inches. His build was that of a bodybuilder and his skin and hair were powdery white with red eyes. He had a cloth that covered his face up to right below his eyes. So it looks like the high priestess sent aid to Konoha. No matter. My name is Gidai and I am a member of the gang of 4 under our leader Yomi. Soon Moria will be one again and we shall serve him in his kingdom. Shouted the man now known as Gidai. Guess he's not the brains of the Operation Heim. Who the hell shouts out important info like the name of your leader or the name of the group you're in? Naruto thought to his vixen with a deadpan look on his face. Yes, well, unfortunately Koi, there are idiots in the world. Kyuubi responded just as astounded. I will stay here. You 4 go on ahead. Naruto, you're in charge, Guy commented without taking his eyes off his opponent. Naruto nodded his head at that and gestured for the others to follow. Gidai watched as Naruto and the others left before turning his attention back to his opponent. Do you think you can beat me by yourself? With this power no one can beat me. Guy just shook his head and got into an advanced form of the Goken. I am sorry but I must finish you as quickly as possible. I must return to my students. Before Gidai could even laugh at Guy's comment he heard a shout of Konoha Daizenko, Leaf Great Flash, and found himself spinning away from a kick to the head. Getting up Gidai wiped the blood from his forehead. Impressive, but it won't be enough. With that he charged Guy with the 2 engaging in a taijutsu match. After 5 minutes the albino learned that Guy was out of his league at his current form. Knowing he would need some time for what he had planned he formed the snake hand seal before shouting out Doden. Tsuchi Kairo, Earth Release, Earth Corridor. Guy watched as the jutsu his opponent used caused the earth in the surrounding area to rise up and over him, creating a cavern, with him completely sealed inside. Gidai, seeing his jutsu working as planned, started his next move. Gathering a large amount of earth-based chakra before calling out Koka no Jutsu, hardening technique, where chunks of the ground around him tore apart and formed over his entire body, except his head, and created an armor of rock. His left hand had formed a larger hand but made of rock, while the rock on his right hand formed a large spiked club. Checking his new armor, Gidai smirked, then rushed toward the dome. Extending his right arm he swung it at the dome and grinned in satisfaction as he watched it tear through it. His eyes narrowed however as the body he was expecting to see wasn't there. He turned around just in time to hear a shout of Konoha Kaigansho, Leaf Rock Destroying Rise, and was flown back by an elbow to his rock-covered gut. Quickly getting up he glared at Guy. How the hell did you get out of that dome? A simple Doden. Mogaragakure no Jutsu, Earth Release, hiding like a mole technique, got me out and behind you. Now I believe it's time to finish this. Spreading his legs apart, crouching a bit and bringing his arms crossed over his chest, Guy closed his eyes then opened them, shouting out Kaiman. Kai, Gate of Opening. Release Kuman. Kai, Gate of Healing. Release Simon. Kai, Gate of Life. Release. Gidai was barely able to stand still with the sudden amount of chakra that poured out of Guy's body. Blinking he suddenly found Guy in front of him. Raising his arms in front of him to brace himself, Guy launched the enemy into the air. Following him he grabbed him from behind and started spinning like a drill on the way down before delivering a bone-shattering punch that easily penetrated Gidai's rock armor and through his chest to his heart, where it exploded from the force of the impact. Standing up, Guy took a breath before making sure his opponent was defeated, then headed towards the others. 10 minutes earlier Naruto and the rest of Team 9 were continuing heading toward the rest of the enemies. Tenten glanced back with a worried look on her face. Do you think Guy-sensei will be alright? I know he's a jonin for a reason, but we have barely any info on these guys, she worded out. He'll be alright, Ten-chan. I'm sure he'll catch up in no time. He's not only a jonin but one of Konoha's strongest nins, Naruto responded back, looking at her with a smile on his face. Tenten smiled at that. Naruto-kun's right. Besides, I need to stay focused on what's in front of us, she thought to herself, her confidence raised. 10 minutes had passed since leaving Gitai behind when the pink-haired member of the Gang of Four suddenly stopped, making the others stop as well. Gitai is dead, he said, looking at the one who was carrying the vase containing Morio's soul. It matters not. He served his purpose. Setsuna, you will stay and hold them off, replied the vase-holding man. Hi Yomi-sama, replied the blue-haired member of the Gang of Four. Let's go, Yomi commanded. After 5 minutes of continuing their chase, Team 9 and Naruto suddenly scattered as they heard a shout of futon, Kaden shuriken, wind release, rotating shuriken, and dodged several incoming projectiles. Jumping from tree to tree, they came across another man. He was of average height and build with long blue hair and blue eyes. I am Setsuna and I shall be your next opponent. Neji, Naruto called, getting the teen's attention. Judging from his build, he's not a close combat specialist and is most likely the mid to long range specialist. You should have no problem as long as you stay close. Neji gave a slight nod of the head at Naruto's deduction. Understood. Be careful, Neji, Tenten said, followed by Lee. Show him your flames of youth, my friend. Neji gave a small smile at Tenten and a smirk at Lee's comment. As he watched them leave, he vowed he wouldn't let his comrades, teammates and Kami knows how his second family down. Tenten went from being his not-so-secret fangirl to the protective older sister, Lee from just being annoying to the annoying younger brother, and Guy, well, Guy was the uncle everyone would like to forget, but they were still his family. And to think if Naruto never arrived, it probably would have still been like before, he thought with a silent chuckle. Getting his thoughts together, Neji slipped into the famed Juken style of the Hyuga clan. Let's see how you do against a member of one of Konoha's strongest clans, and with that said, Neji charged forward. Seeing Neji heading towards him, Setsuna jumped back while throwing a large number of shuriken and kunai. Seeing him dodging them and him catching up fast, his hands shifted into the ram hand seal before inhaling and thinking futon, kamikaze, wind release, divine wind, and exhaling, where several small tornadoes formed and headed towards Neji. Making his way around them, Neji lost sight of his attacker. Quickly activating his Byakugan, Neji spotted him 100 meters to the north. Damn it, he's trying to separate me from the others. If I ignore him and continue towards the others, I'm vulnerable to being attacked from behind, and even I can't keep the Byakugan on forever. Sighing, he made up his mind and chased after his target. Quickly catching up, he spotted Setsuna going through 3 hand seals that ended on ram before summoning a large amount of chakra, then suddenly noticed a large vortex of wind heading his way, destroying anything in its path. He quickly got out of its path before hearing Setsuna laughing. Well, what do you think? It's called futon. Kami Oroshi, wind release, godly wind from the mountain. Quite impressive, no? This is only a fraction of the power given to us. You have no way of winning. Setsuna continued laughing after his little rant. While true that it is impressive, that technique takes a large amount of chakra, and I can see his reserves are already being depleted. If I can just get him to use more of those high chakra jutsu, Neji thought as he straightened himself to get ready for the next round, then I can beat him. 20 minutes of running and dodging later, and Setsuna finally realized what Neji had been planning when he found himself low on chakra and yet his opponent had barely used any. You were within my field of divination, a voice whispered behind him. Quickly turning around, he was met with a shout of Hake Rokuji and Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms, before strike after strike was launched against his body, with the final and 64th strike against his heart. Stepping back, Neji watched as the man fell to the ground, blood starting to flow out of his mouth. You have about 3 minutes before you die. Perhaps if you pray for forgiveness and are sincere about it, maybe Kami-sama will grant your forgiveness and welcome you into her arms. Farewell. As Neji left to catch up with his comrades, he went over the fight and its conclusion. While it wasn't his first kill, it still was hard to digest, but then the thought that he kept his vow to his comrades that he would return to them made his spirit strengthen. 20 minutes since departing from Neji, Naruto, Tenten and Lee came upon their next opponent. "My name is Shizuku and my master has ordered me to stop you from moving any further," said Shizuku. She stood at the same height of Tenten, 5 feet 6 inches, with light orange hair and black eyes. Naruto eyed her, taking in any and all information he could get on their opponent before looking at Tenten. "Ten-chan," he called, getting her attention. "Judging from who we've gone up against so far, I'm guessing she's the other close combat specialist. Normally I wouldn't put you against someone like her since you specialize in long-range attacks, but with the training guy and I have been giving you, you shouldn't have too much of a problem." Tenten nodded her head at that, her gaze returning to her opponent. "Go, I'll take care of her," she said as she moved forward toward her opponent. Seeing this, Naruto gestured to Lee and the two continued on their way. Shizuku, seeing the two leaving, started going through hand seals to stop them but had to dodge as a large number of shuriken and kunai came sailing at her. "Your opponent is me and me only," Tenten commented as she watches Shizuku glaring at her. "You think you can defeat me on your own? I heard that blonde say that you specialize in long-range attacks. How do you plan to beat me if I don't let you get far enough to use your techniques?" questioned Shizuku. Smirking, Tenten replies, "Just because I specialize in long-range attacks doesn't mean I'm not skilled in other areas." Glaring at the smirking teen, Shizuku put her hands in the tiger seal before shouting, "Sweden, Mizu Kamikiri, water release, rising water slicer." Tenten's eyes widened as she quickly jumped out of the way as a large jet of water came towards her, cutting through the ground like butter as it did. Settling on a tree branch, she quickly found her opponent and unsealed more shuriken before throwing them. She watched as they flew toward their target and impaled her body, one even impaled her forehead. Tenten's eyes narrowed, however, then watched as Shizuku collapsed into a puddle of water. Mizu Bunshin, Tenten thought, looking for the real Shizuku. Hearing a sound behind her, she jumped as a dragon made of water tore through her previous spot. "That looks like the Suiryuden no Jutsu, but there's no water nearby. So how the hell can she use a jutsu of that degree?" Tenten thought as her eyes widened when the dragon suddenly turned around and headed for her. Jumping on the ground, Tenten quickly went through 4 hand seals before slamming them on the ground and shouting out, "Doden Doryuheki," where a wall appeared in front of her, taking the hit of the water dragon. Good thing Naruto-kun had us find out our elemental affinities. Shizuku narrowed her eyes at the display of a high-level Doden jutsu. Watching as Tenten was making her way towards her, she went through more hand seals before shouting out, "Sweden Suiruben, water release, water dragon whip," where a large ball of water surrounded Shizuku before dozens of sharp whips emerged from the ball of water and all heading towards Tenten. She gracefully dodged one after the other and continued to get closer before her eyes widened and she looked down to see a tendril of water sticking through her stomach. Shizuku saw this and smirked. Dispelling her jutsu, she walked toward her opponent only for her eyes to widen as Tenten turned into mud. Shit, when did she make a Tsuchi Bunshin? Shizuku thought in panic. Her eyes widened as she looked down and spotted a sword covered in blood sticking through her stomach. Leaning forward, Tenten whispered in her ear, "You were a worthy opponent, but you were overconfident in your abilities. Because of that you have lost." Pulling her sword out, Tenten watched as Shizuku fell to the ground, blood pooling around her. Sighing, Tenten took out some wipes and cleaned the blood off her sword before resealing it and making her way to Naruto and Lee. Lee was currently fighting his opponent. It was the pink-haired one and he introduced himself as Kusuna and as Yomi's second-in-command. Lee quickly found out that his opponent was skilled in Ijutsu and had to be careful as he dodged his opponent's usage of the Chakura no Mesu chakra scalpel. Back and forth they went until Lee finally found an opening. Releasing a flurry of attacks, Lee kicked Kusuna into the air, then shouted out Saishin Furu Pawa, springtime of youthful power, and landed a chakra-enhanced powerful drop kick, sending Kusuna back down to earth with enough force that he emitted a bright light before impact. Landing on the ground, Lee made sure his opponent was dead before offering a quick prayer, and as he turned to continue on, saw Gai-sensei, Tenten and Neji making their way towards him. "Are you all right, Lee?" questioned Tenten. "I am fine, Tenten. Since you are all here, I am assuming you beat your opponent as well?" Lee asked. Getting a nod from both Tenten and Neji and a thumbs up from Gai-sensei, they made their way to catch up to Naruto. Naruto reached the entrance to the site that contained Morio's body. Seeing that the guards were dead, he rushed inside just in time to see Yomi breaking the seal on the vase and Morio's soul heading towards his unsealed body. Yes, rise Morio. Rise and create your 1,000-year kingdom. Yomi shouted as he began to laugh. Naruto watched as several large dark purple dragon heads with red eyes started to rise off the ground. Each one started roaring before focusing its attention on Yomi. You have done well, my servant. I shall finally destroy this world and shape it to my image. But first I need to regain my strength, and it seems you will have to do for now. Yomi's eyes widened. But Morio-sama, I have done everything you've told me. You promised that I would get to serve by you in the new world. Yes, and you will. By me devouring you, you shall be with me always. And with that, Morio used one of his heads to devour the screaming man. Man sucks to be him, Naruto commented, gaining the demon's attention. And who might you be, boy? Have you come to serve me as well? No, I'm here to finally kill you once and for all. That way Moroku-chan and Shin-chan will no longer have to sacrifice their lives to keep you at bay. Chuckling, the demon retorted, ah yes, I had forgotten about that family for a second there. After I devour you, they shall be my next meal. Unfortunately for you, Morio, I am the worst human aside from the Rakuto Sennin himself for you to face. Oh, and why is that? Gathering a large amount of chakra, Naruto responded, because just like the Rakuto Sennin, I too possess the Ranpu element. Seeing each and every eye widen, Naruto shouted out one of his strongest Ranpu jutsu before Morio could react. Ranpu, Kami no Sabaki, light, God's judgment. No, no, I cannot die, I will not die, Morio shouted as his entire being was covered in bright white light. Inside the light, Morio cowered in fear as he felt his body being torn apart, then finally his soul, never to exist again. When the light receded, Naruto stood panting, looking at the spot Morio was once at. Hearing footsteps behind him, he turned to see Team 9 rushing in. Tenten, seeing him, rushed forward, bringing the two down as she hugged him. Baka, what were you thinking? Facing a demon by yourself? We all felt the amount of Yuki that demon was releasing as it was resurrected, she shouted into his chest. Naruto was startled at her reaction. He knew they were more than friends, but not quite boyfriend, girlfriend either yet. Wrapping his arms around her, he rubbed her back to try to calm her down. Shush, it's alright, Ten-chan. You know I was the best choice to fight him with my unique skills. Guy and Lee were crying at the sight of the two youths being youthful. Neji just shook his head at them but raised an eyebrow when he heard Naruto mention unique skills. What kind of skill is unique enough to not only kill a demon but survive? It would seem there's more to you, Naruto, than I thought, and by the looks of it, Tenten, and by Guy-sensei's lack of questions regarding what happened to Morio, know more than you have told Lee and I. When Naruto and Team 9 returned to Moroku's home, they were greeted by the others. They had all felt Morio power even all the way out here. During dinner, Team 9 told the others about their fight. While Kiba complained he didn't get any action, he knew that he wasn't strong enough to beat the opponents they faced. When questioned what happened to Morio, Naruto told them that his body couldn't contain all that power again, as he noticed the seals that kept it sealed had weakened it over the years and his body imploded in itself. Seeing that Team 9 didn't disagree on that, Ino and Kiba couldn't believe it ended so anticlimactic. Later that night, we find Naruto, Kurenai, Tenten, Moroku and Shin all in Moroku's room. Kurenai was sitting to Naruto's left while Tenten was sitting to his right, and the two priestesses sat in front of them. So it would seem you two have gotten closer since you left, Moroku commented at Naruto and Tenten. Tenten blushed while Naruto smiled. Yes, on our way back we decided to see where our feelings for each other would lead us, and so far I am happy we took the plunge, Naruto commented, wrapping an arm around Tenten's waist, bringing her in closer as his other arm was already around Kurenai's waist as she was snuggled into his side. Anyways, now that Morio is finally gone for good, what will you do now? You have the whole world in front of you to do as you wish, he commented. Kurenai grinned from her position as she saw Moroku and Shin start to blush. Calming herself, Shin lowered her head on the ground in front of Naruto before speaking. Naruto-sama, I ask for your forgiveness for my earlier behavior. I have realized that I have been acting like, some would say, a bitch, toward those who only wish to help me and my family. If you would give me the honor, I would like to accept the marriage contract between our two families and become your fiancé and see where it leads us. Detaching himself from his girls, he scooted closer in front of Shin where she still had her head on the floor. Placing his hand on her head, he ran his hand through her soft hair, then bringing it down to her cheek where she lifted her head with tears in her eyes. Naruto smiled before bringing their faces together and kissing her. So this is what a kiss is like. Shin thought, then moaned as Naruto's tongue entered her mouth and explored before leaving, and he pulled back from the kiss with a grin on his face, seeing the look on her face. I would be honored if you became one of my fiancés, Shin-chan. Although if you are to become one of my mates, you must promise me to never address me as Sama, and if you wish may add, Kun, until you are comfortable with something more personal. Shin smiled at that and nodded as he turned his attention to Miroku, whose blush intensified seeing the kiss between her daughter and Naruto, with the moan not helping. And what of you, Miroku-chan? You are always welcome to the Namikaze Estates or Whirlpool Kingdom. As you might be aware of, as a priestess we are forbidden from having a romantic relationship, but with Morio gone for good now, my family no longer needs to protect this land. And sooner or later this life that we've become accustomed to will be gone, as the people no longer need us. Pausing, she looked at Kurenai for support, and seeing her smile she looked back at Naruto. What I'm trying to say is that I would like to see if I could become another woman you could love. She closed her eyes as soon as she had said it, too nervous to look him in the eyes. Naruto was not expecting that. While he would admit he found a physical attraction towards Miroku, he didn't think she would have those types of feelings for him. What were the odds that he would find love in another pair of mother and daughter? Looking at Kurenai, she gave a nod and he turned his attention back towards Miroku, her eyes still closed. Looking at Shin, he saw that she wasn't surprised by this and her eyes seemed to be pleading for him to accept. He assumed the three of them must have talked about this while they were gone, since besides him the only one shocked was Tenten. Give her a chance, Koichi. Everyone deserves a chance to be loved, commented his red-haired vixen. Moving closer to the high priestess, he wrapped his arms around her and brought his lips upon hers, giving her his answer. They talked during the night, getting to know each other better. They agreed that Miroku and Shin would arrive a week before the Chunin exams, the same time his two-chan should be arriving. He warned them of the possible invasion and that they would stay in the Namikaze Estates if it were to happen, to which they agreed. Giving them all a kiss goodnight, Naruto and Kurenai departed to the same room as everyone else headed to theirs. The Konoha nin stayed for a few more days to make sure there were no more threats, and on the fourth day departed back to Konoha. With the 5-day pace back, it was the middle of May when they made it back to Konoha. Signing in, the Jonin dismissed their students, and with a quick kiss to the cheek from Tenten that had Hinata and Ino gaping, she dashed off with Ino in pursuit as she dragged Hinata with. Chuckling at that, the 3 Jonin and 1 cage-level genin made their way towards the Hokage Tower, traveling along the ninja highway. As they entered the floor of the Hokage's office, Naruto smiled when he saw Tsubaki. "Tsubaki-chan," he called out. Tsubaki turned her head as she heard someone call her name. Smiling at who it was and who was with him, she got up and gave him a kiss. Stepping back, she greeted them. "Welcome back, Narukoi, Kur-chan, Asuma, and of course last but not least, Guy." She got a smile from her future sister figure, a nod from Asuma, and Guy's infamous, nice guy pose, consisting of the usual giving a thumbs up, winking, and smiling with teeth so white they give the proverbial ping. After a couple minutes of catching up, she sent them into the Hokage's office. Hiruzen looked up as he heard the door open. He already had a good idea who was on the other side, as he recognized the chakra signatures and the fact he could hear them talking on the other side of the door. He smiled as they lined up in front of his genjutsu-wearing form. Stepping forward, Asuma spoke up. "Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama. Ah, that's good to hear. Why don't you give me a summary of the mission and turn in your reports by the end of the week if there's nothing of immediate importance?" Hiruzen suggested, commanded. They all looked at Naruto, and he did a good job of ignoring them until Kurenai used a cheap shot, the puppy eye no jutsu. Sighing, he stepped forward, ignoring the Hokage's amused expression. "We arrived in Oni no Kuni within 3 days, where we soon met the High Priestess. She informed us of what was going on, and the next day we decided Team 8 and 10 would stay and guard the High Priestess and her Masumi, while Team 9 and I pursued the assailants. We eventually caught up to them, where Guy faced the first opponent, Neji the next, Tenten the one after that, Lee faced the second in command, and by the time I got to the leader he had already resurrected the demon. Said demon then devoured the leader, and after a short conversation I defeated the demon with one of my strongest attacks of my Ranpu element." "Very good. Anything else happen?" he asked with a grin. Blinking, Naruto's eyes suddenly got wide before he pointed a finger at him. "You knew." You knew that the client's daughter was one of my fiancés arranged by Tu-san and Ka-san before I left. Why didn't you tell me? Laughing, Hiruzen responded, what can't an old man have his fun every now and then? So what happened? Is the arranged marriage still on, as I'm assuming you told them of your existence? Yes, it is still on. Since the demon is no more, their duties as priestesses are no longer required. So after getting to know them while we were there, Shion-chan and Moroku-chan are both coming here a week before the Chunin exams. Moroku-chan, it seems you were quite busy up there, weren't you? Sarutobi chuckled. Yes, well, after having Ten-chan, Ker-chan, Shion-chan and Q-chan telling me to give her a chance, I couldn't say no. Besides, I'll admit there was something between us while I was there, and we'll just see where it goes when they arrive. Don't forget that you and Tenten have finally gotten together too, Narukoi, Kurenai teased as she and the others laughed at Naruto's blushing form. So what if he was one of the strongest nins in the village? If not the strongest, he could still blush, damn it. Deciding to add his Ryo to the conversation, Asuma added, also Naruto, don't forget you still have to treat us all to a one-day expenses paid, do whatever you want day. Yeah, I haven't forgotten you, chain smoker, Naruto shot back. If that's all, then you're free to go, Hiruzen said, watching as they filed out of the room. Once the door closed, he pulled open the bottom drawer to his left and smiled, my precious. Tsubaki just sweat dropped as she heard the Hokage giggling perversely in his office. So, this is the end for now, so subscribe.